This webinar is going to be about endpoint privilege management. It's going to be completely and absolutely a practical test and a practical assessment. You can ask us any kind of questions. There will be demonstrations. It's not just theoretical. Our speaker Qusai today has done a lot of EPM implementations across the Middle East. He has done a lot of PAM and identity access management implementations across the Middle East. So it's going to be an engaging session. It's going to be very interactive. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We're expecting a lot of questions. There's one promise we will make. We will leave no question unanswered. That's absolutely sure. All right. So can you move to the next slide? So this is all about endpoint privilege management and everything that you wanted to know about endpoint privilege management, including demos, case studies, and so on. This next slide, Qusai, this is a part of what we call the Cybersecurity Olympics, where we've had about 9 webinars on different topics. If you go to our website, paramountassure.com or ahlan.com, you will find a lot of details about that. You can also read up and learn about the previous webinars that we've done and certain key learnings as a cybersecurity professional.
Hope I'm all clear. So today, the focus is, of course, endpoint privilege management. We'll talk very quickly about the threat landscape, talk about the balance between productivity and cybersecurity, which is always the fight between users and IT security. We talk on what are the expert views around administrative rights that normally users end up having, and then how endpoint privilege management is going to help. We have the demos and case studies throughout the journey. Of course, primarily we'll focus on certain use cases that solves the endpoint privilege management challenges that customers normally face. So the threat landscape, yeah. Security breaches are as prevalent and costly as ever. If you look at the statistics, we are looking at statistics coming from data breach reports of IBM, 2023, and investigation report from Verizon, again 2023. 83% of organizations have had more than one security breach, and identifying, containing the data breach is a complex and costly process. In 2023, it took organizations the mean time of around 204 days to identify that they have been breached, and an additional 77 days on top of that to contain the breach. Total cost of breach was $4.45 million. It is up by 15.3% since 2020. And majority of the breaches were perpetrated by external threat actors, 83% in 2023. However, the insiders also pose a major threat in 2 different ways, right? And that accounts to 19% of the data breaches. Some of the insiders are malicious and intentionally harm the organization, but you'll not be surprised, but insiders are also twice as likely to harm the organization through mistakes that otherwise jeopardizes the sensitive data, right? They could expose cloud buckets, as simple as that. It could be some data coming on from the critical systems. And then threats are expanding. How are these external threats able to gain access to so many organizations? Well, again, reports from Verizon, and this time also we have a report from Malwarebytes. We're seeing that malware, including ransomware, pose a serious security threat. Around 71% of the companies were affected by malware in 2022. And stolen credentials often play a major role, right? More than 49% of the breaches in 2023 were by using stolen credentials, which are frequently acquired via social engineering campaigns like phishing, smishing, or pretexting. And of course, the most important or critical stolen credentials are always the administrative credentials. The most common endpoint type that threat actors normally will target are, of course, the servers, right? So allowing them to gain access to critical applications and processes as well as sensitive data, which organizations are otherwise hosting on them. 80% of the breaches affect a server, right? Now, what are the solutions to these threats? We're talking about security solutions such as privileged access management, endpoint security solutions, access management, multi-factor solutions, identity management solutions, and so on. However, the biggest challenge that organizations always face is to strike a balance on productivity of the users while not compromising the security, right? We would want the first poll to come up over here. Do you have a PAM solution, right?
Qusai, there's a question. Can you take a quick stab at the answer? The question is, uh, what is the biggest reason that you see is the reason for this lack of balance?
So I will highlight the primary challenge that end users always face is that they want ease, they want convenience. And the moment a lot of convenience is given, security gets compromised, right? And that is where the balance is important. While not compromising the ease of usage for the end users, you also want to ensure that appropriate security measures are in place. And we'll get into more details about what are the primary challenges that are around endpoint privilege management, which is the topic for today. How that creates an imbalance between end users and security teams. We'll cover up in the next few slides.
Got it.
Have we done with the poll one?
Yeah, let's move to the next one.
Perfect. Okay. So we just asked a question about do you have a PAM solution, right? And Mukund, do we see the answers now or we see them at the end?
We see them at the end, but
Okay, fine.
essentially 50% of them do not have any PAM solutions. Two of them are planning to buy, and the remaining have limited PAM.
Okay, fair enough. So let us understand what PAM, right? PAM is a generic word which nowadays, the moment somebody says PAM, of course, there is already a solution which is running in people's mind, right? What PAM, of course, focuses on, and of course, when we say PAM, we're talking about privileged access management. We're talking about comprehensive privileged asset security, right? We are talking about a solution which will safeguard all of your privileged assets, regardless of whether they are on-premise or they are in the cloud, whether they are SaaS based or they are in your data centers, in infrastructure as a service model or in physical data centers. And of course, what it does is it removes the risk of the administrative credentials, which are, of course, otherwise keys to the kingdom. We're talking about domain administrator accounts, SA accounts, root accounts, and any administrative account to whether it is a network device, a security device, a database, an application, or of course, an operating system. So what a PAM solution does is it automatically discover all of these accounts and then eliminates the risk around them by, of course, rotating these passwords and taking control of these credentials, which means users don't have these credentials anymore. The administrators don't carry these credentials anymore. We talk about compliance assurance because it will ensure that secure access is given only through approval workflows, whether it is for employees and vendor administrators. When employees can, of course, always have some pre-approved workflows, but vendors can always have approvals necessary before they can access any privileged asset. It will prevent credential thefts because, of course, the passwords are automatically managed by the PAM solutions. We're talking about enhanced user experience because the administrators who otherwise were required to keep a track of these passwords and then enter them every time they wanted to access any system, and then otherwise maybe sometimes saving them or keeping them safe in insecure locations is not required anymore. They will get or they will enjoy single sign-on experience to operating systems, network devices, databases, applications, and so on. So it is seamless user access. And of course, from compliance perspective and from now audit or forensics perspective, you also want to ensure that you have end-to-end video recording, session recording of all the actions or activities that the privileged user has done. So PAM solutions provide those vendor or internal employee video recordings of end-to-end sessions, which can be then used for future analysis. This is what a PAM solution does. But is PAM good enough? Will PAM take care of all of your privileged scenarios? Will you be now protected? Are there any other privileged access which also needs control? Yes, of course. Because it does not remove your local administrative rights, right? Even on servers, it does not remove the administrative rights. If a user has administrative permissions given on the PAM, they enjoy full administrative permissions when they are on that session. So PAM does not remove the administrative rights from the users. You still need to manage those exceptions. For endpoints, we always see customers end up using solutions like Labs, a Microsoft tool. We'll talk a little more about Labs in the next slide. And of course, you still end up then later on granting access gradually. So even if you have removed the administrative rights over a period of time, because of the pressure or the requirements from the development teams, from the system administrator teams, you start giving those privileged access, which is the administrative rights, back to the users so that it becomes easy, convenient. This is exactly what you're talking about, user productivity versus security. End user protection, right? PAM does not specifically address the vulnerabilities around ransomware or malware attacks, right? If you have issues on your end machines, including servers, it is not providing any additional protection on top of that, right? You need appropriate endpoint security measures. And of course, application control, right? So if you have logged in as an administrator, you have full access to all the applications. You can start, stop services. You can run any installer, install any softwares. It does not control what applications users can or cannot run. And this is more and more important on endpoints, especially on developer machines, on machines of system administrators or others who normally log in with high privileged access or basically local administrative rights. I was talking about labs, right? But is it enough? What Microsoft Labs actually provides, it centralizes password management. And of course, it prevents use of common passwords for your local administrator accounts. However, of course, it does not support non-Windows environment. So your Mac and Linux are still out of your scope from Labs. It will not elevate the privileges. So once an administrator checks out the password and wants to use it, he has full permissions of administrative rights on that machine. It does not restrict the access to a specific task that he's supposed to otherwise only execute on the machine. It is not going to limit the malwares or insider threats. They still remain. And of course, you don't get detailed analytics, reports of what exactly was done by the administrator after he checks out that password. So Labs is not enough, of course. It does not take care of all of your scenarios that you would otherwise require on for your endpoint privilege management. Now we talked about administrative rights, right? The whole focus is on removing administrative rights. But then why do users demand them? Because they want convenience, right? What do they need it for? To be able to install softwares, to be able to change system settings. They want to be able to run some system utilities, right? Depending on what is their day-to-day role, they might also require to update the softwares or install softwares on the specific applications. If they are a developer, they might need access to some legacy applications which can only launch or run unless you don't use administrative permissions. So some legacy applications will require administrative rights to run. So these are typical reasons, of course, and there could be many more that you will always find your users bring up saying we need administrative rights for something else as well. And help desk has options to solve the problem by assigning some administrators to go and fix the problem for the end users, install software for the end users, and so on. But of course, that means a lot of help desk tickets. The other area that we always see customers start looking at is that we already have an endpoint detection and response solution. We have an EDR. Do we still need endpoint privilege management? Well, yes, because what an EDR does is it's a reactive solution. It is not preventive. it does not prevent execution of a malware, for example. What it does is that, including, of course, malwares and ransomware, but it is not reducing your attack surface. If your machine has administrative permissions on them, then the attack surface is still there. The risk of malwares to automatically execute will still remain. The threats with the insiders is still there, right? The risk of escalation of privileges is always going to be there. If somebody hacker gets access, he will always be able to attempt to escalate the privileges. So all of those privilege escalation attacks are still there. What it also does not do is it does not enforce least privilege. It does not do application control or control which applications a user can or cannot run. It does not provide you just-in-time access, right? It does not focus on compliance reporting, or it does not provide user education. That's a very important piece. While we will do a demonstration, it will become more clear how there are solutions on endpoint privilege management, which helps users become more aware of why and when they should possibly try to access something or not. Mukund, you raise your hand before I continue if you want to ask something.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was time for the second poll question. That's one. But I also have an example. When you say, I mean, I also have a question. The question is, I think it's from a gentleman called Mohammed Shameen. Mohammed asks if you can give him one or two examples of the preventive uh, things that EDR can't do.
Yeah. So we have a very specific demo which will focus on what EDR will not do. But let me help very quickly with that answer while people, I think we missed the poll 2 and 3. So let poll 2 and after that poll 3 also run. In between, I will answer this very quickly. So what we are talking about with EDR
So you want the
solution is
poll 3
that
now?
it is, of course, yeah, after poll 2 is done, let us go ahead with poll 3. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just open up the
Yeah.
poll 3 while while Qusai does the answer, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the EDR solutions, they do focus, of course, on ensuring that if there is a malware, it will provide the necessary protection. But modern EDRs get optimized and the noise is reduced when you are now layered on a foundation of zero administrative rights with an EPM solution. So if there are no administrative permissions that users have, you've already removed the high risk which otherwise insider threats continue to pose. And for example, when you are trying to execute an application which is otherwise approved, right? It could be a Windows application, Microsoft application like Word or an Excel file. And if there are executables or macros which are running, which a user might allow to execute by saying enable content, there's a decent chance that then EPM is going to for sure block it. And we have some demonstrations that will further clarify that. Hopefully I've answered the question, but I think if it is not answered after the end of the session. Yes.
Qusai, it is a 50-50 split. 50% have said that they don't have an EDR, 50% have said that they have an EDR. Does anybody want to talk about their experience with EDR? I can just allow you to talk. Is that okay? We'll just wait for 2 seconds to see if anybody wants to talk about their experience on EDR. All right, let's move on. I don't think anybody had anything to say.
Sure. So what we are talking about is we want to achieve least privilege. We want to go in the direction of zero trust. And one of the important step is to remove local administrative rights, right? We don't want users having local administrative rights. And then what are experts saying around them? Removing admin rights is one of the most basic yet powerful and protective measure an organization can take, right? We talk about Microsoft vulnerabilities. Most of them are, of course, around if a user ends up carrying local administrative rights. Removing admin rights is not just about security, it is also going to allow your computers to run faster, better, and longer. If users are operating with administrative rights, the ransomware can spread more easily. Of course, there are EDRs and other solutions that endpoints might have, which will provide some level of protection, but that won't suffice. To protect Unix Linux accounts, and organizations have to implement controls which allow for central management of their privileged accounts. And even Gartner very clearly says removing administrator rights from end users is one of the most effective ways to improve overall security posture. So everybody is focusing very clearly, and there's no debate that local administrative rights should not be present with end users. Then why are organizations hesitant in removing them, right? Typically, you'll see that there is a fear that removing the administrative rights can drastically reduce the productivity of the end users. Granting the admin privileges is perceived as fast and convenient for the IT. Fear that removing the administrative rights will resist in a sharp increase in the service desk tickets. And of course, there is a concern about how complicated it will be to remove administrative rights from all the users, because users might still demand they need access to certain applications, and they can only run if they have administrative permissions, and they want to be able to install printers, or they should be able to change the drivers and stuff like that, right? And they don't want help desk tickets to be opened every time. They need some power, right? This is exactly where we go to the next slide, talking about striking balance, right? Striking balance between productivity and security. You don't want unproductive, right? You want productive environment. So users will require freedom. They will need a consumer-like experience, right? They want that power. System stability and uptime is, of course, very important for them. They want to be able to continuously be productive. They want to be efficient while they are during those working hours that they have. And of course, they want flexibility, right? They want flexibility to run new applications, something new that comes up. They don't want every time help desk to be involved for getting new access. And they want sometimes convenience to be able to configure their endpoints. They might need to change sometimes some settings around the systems. And that flexibility otherwise is removed the moment you remove the local administrative rights. And from security perspective, of course, you want to ensure that you have strong security configurations and controls. You want to ensure that applications and operating systems are always fully patched. There are no vulnerable or potentially insecure applications or high-risk activities, users ending up running PowerShell scripts, for example. You don't want unknown or unapproved applications from running, right? You always create a profile for the end user machines, and you want to ensure that the users are able to not execute apart from anything else on top of that. And removing the local administrative rights to achieve the least privilege, right? This is exactly what is going to create the balance. But it's not easy, right? And this is where the endpoint privilege management solutions come in play. And you need, of course, them not only for your desktops, but also for your servers. You don't need them only for your Windows environment, but if you are using Mac or Linux machines, you would ideally need for all of them. Our primary focus today is, of course, on Windows environment. What are the outcomes? Once you have an endpoint privilege management, you're talking about you should be able to now enforce least privileged access across your desktops and servers. You should be able to enable zero trust security, right? As I told, this is one of the first steps. We have a very large government organization as part of their zero trust program that they are running. Endpoint privilege management was one of the first solutions that they decided to onboard. Yes, Mukul.
Okay, we have a question from Nagraj. Okay, the question is, what do you think are the rights that never should be given? I have a lot of third-party users who have been given laptops, and I have certain vendors who have access to some critical parts of my system.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We see in this region, apart from here also, we have seen scenarios where organizations end up giving their own pre-configured laptops to the end users, including sometimes Paramount or Ahlan. We also have access to customer environments, and the only way we have access is by using the customer provided laptops, which comes with pre-built an image which provides necessary protection as perceived by them. Um, if I have given as an administrator me using doing a project on endpoint privilege management or on privileged access management, and if I have local administrative rights, then of course there is a high risk that I carry on that desktop. Or even if I don't have local administrative rights, but I have enough permissions to be able to execute and run softwares, or maybe start and stop services and do various system settings, then I'm already potentially a threat to the organization, right? Because I am using that laptop to control and connect to the customer's environment. So it is ideal that apart from all the other endpoint security solutions, if I also have endpoint privilege management, then I have, as an organization, much better control on this third-party vendor who otherwise gets full access from my own provided laptop. That answers, hopefully, Nagraj, your question. Okay, I'll move forward.
Yeah.
The other important desired outcomes we're talking about is you want to reduce the attack surface, right? You don't want to allow potentially a malware or ransomware or a fileless threat to be present, right? You want to reduce or remove completely that opportunity to these hackers. You want to reduce the IT workload and enhance the operational efficiency, right? And you want to meet compliance requirements. You want to meet the cyber insurance requirements. Of course, the solution should be quick to deploy. It should be fast time to value. There's a perception about how endpoint privilege management solutions otherwise are very difficult to implement. It is very difficult to identify what access I want to give to the end users and so on. We'll go a little in detail, talk about what exactly is offered by some EPM solutions in the next few slides, right? So these are the three most important points around endpoint privilege management, which a customer would want. You want to enforce least privilege dynamically. You don't want static rules, and you want to reduce the attack surface, maintain the productivity. What you do is you remove the admin privileges, right? The solution allows you to remove the administrative rights while maintaining the user productivity. And of course, taking care of the IT service desk workload. There is some amount of work which can be automated, and the involvement of service desk can be minimized. So again, during some of the demos which we will run while we are running these slides, we'll make it very clear how we do that. You want application controls. You want to allow and deny certain applications, right? You want to ensure that you are able to granularly control what users can run or cannot run in terms of applications, and in terms of course, trusted applications, right? Now, what we talk about when we talk about trusted application protection, the focus is on ensuring that if there are attacks which involves trusted applications like the Microsoft applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on, you want to catch if there are scripts which are running, there are macros which are running. If there are infected email attachments, the moment you click on them, even while you're previewing them, sometimes you're at the risk of executing a malware. So we want to ensure that we have all of these important areas covered. And of course, the solution should then provide appropriate reporting, seamless integrations, and provide appropriate governance or audit. Mukund, is there another question, or is your hand raised from previous? Okay.
There are two questions, Qusai. Let's see if you can get them.
Yes.
One.
Yes.
What are the thumbnails or what are the symptoms that I need EPM? That's one question from a guy called Nidin. The second question, the same person is asking the second question is, it says, what are the thumb rules that I must consider before I start implementing EPM?
So the second question will get covered in the next few slides of what you should think, or let us say plan through before you move forward in the EPM implementations. But most important, I mean, the first question, right, about what are the signs that you need EPM, right? If your environment allows users with local administrative permissions, then you are a very clear organization where an EPM is a must-have. A lot of customers try to remove the local administrative rights, but then they possibly end up doing it only for a far majority of the users, but you still will have developers, you will still have a lot of support desks or desktop support admins who still carry and continue to have this local administrative rights. So if you have that scenario, for sure you need an endpoint privilege management solution.
Great. Qusai, before you go ahead, can we just open up the next poll, please?
I think our next poll, we done the next poll, right, Mukul?
Yeah. This is poll number 4, the fourth question.
Okay.
All right. So this is something that Qusai is really good in. He can work with assessing your identity security. Would you want him to work with you guys and work on your identity security, how secure it is, what are the aspects that you need to cover up, which threats are you exposing your organization through? All these things can be covered. Qusai, just give a sentence or two about how you land up doing this and how do you go about this?
Yeah. So an identity security assessment, right? We are right now, the offer that we are currently focusing on is a tool-based approach, right? We want to ensure that by running this, we are able to identify. We focus, of course, on your identity providers. So we focus on your Active Directory, your Entra ID, where ideally your identities are present. And then what are the high risk users that you have? We look at what are these users able to do, what is happening with your service accounts, right? Some areas which are completely otherwise blind to end users, there are no appropriate reports that you end up getting from Microsoft Active Directory or from even your PAM solutions. So we conduct these type of assessments to help customers identify at what stage they are in, or rather at what risk they are with their identities. And sometimes, depending on, of course, some engagements, we go into a more detailed consulting approach. But the assessment that we are focusing on here right now will be a tool-based approach, Mukul.
Okay, great. How long will it take, Qusai, to finish that assessment? Typically, you did one for that pharma company, right? So how long did that take?
So the previous assessments that we have done, if we do the default assessments, we are talking about a 1 week of engagement.
1 week of engagement.
And yes, where we are, of course, while we will run this, and this could be just 1 or 2 days of activity, but then after that, we collect the reports, we create appropriate presentation for your management, and then present it in maybe sometimes one, or even if required, multiple sessions. So with the previous customers, when we have done such engagements, it has allowed them to identify the potential risks that they otherwise are carrying with their identities. Without going into too many details, it basically opened up for them the number of generic and service accounts which were there in the system, which nobody had any accountability of. They even had a couple of orphan and dormant accounts that were identified, which were again completely unaccounted for. So these are some of the very basic reports, very easy and quick ones that you will, of course, get as part of this assessment.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So, yeah, I think there was a question around the potential timelines and what kind of what we need to worry about if at all we want to implement an endpoint privilege management solution.
Yeah.
Can we
Qusai,
easily remove the
the
administrative
question
rights?
was, what are the thumb rules for getting ahead and starting EPM? That was the question.
Okay. So as part of that answer to that question, I would say that when you want to remove administrative rights, you don't want to then start thinking or worrying about trying to figure out how each and every user you are going to manage. Each of them will come with their own demands and requirements. And this is again that balance that we talked about, productivity versus security. So you would want to ensure that you have a solution which provides you flexible policies, right? So you jump straight away into out-of-box policies, templates, which will allow your environment to start learning while in parallel not disrupting the end user's administrative permissions. So you allow them, let us say, a flexibility, high flexibility policy or rule which will allow them to be able to access pretty much all that they are accessing. But you have at the at least high level blocked certain access, right? You whatever is high risk for sure you have blocked, for example. And in the next demo, in the next few slides, when you come to the demo, it will be more clear on how those flexibility rules allow you to be able to very quickly deploy the solution. We are talking about an environment of around 3,000 assets for which there is a deployment going on. Um, while the policy finalization is the design workshops and the policy finalization was around 2 weeks of time that we were talking about. The deployment is, of course, going to take much longer for them. And then post deployment, at some point in time, when they will want to revise the policies, that is when they will again go back and relook at those policies. But if you look at for such a large environment also to start with, right, you don't have to worry too much about the preparation time. We were able to finalize the designs and the work styles or policies that will need to be deployed for them within first 2 weeks of discussions with the appropriate stakeholders. So, okay, let me move forward. The important area that we were talking about is, right, while you remove administrative rights, you also want to add application control. Uh, not all malware, of course, needs administrative rights, right? So application control will then allow you to be able to take control of what should be able to update and request for what applications they want access to. So application control improves the security compliance. They're never going to use. So least privilege means that sysadmins don't have the ability to write to secure areas, right? You want to automatically trust them. Only pre-approved installations or those which are deployed through trusted mechanisms are allowed. And of course, the only area that needs control is the user profile. So when this is with EPM quick start and exception handling will help. So you control what users can install or run. It will be lightweight policies which will allow and deny listing. The quick start policies will help you to immediately deploy the solution without worrying too much about how and what should be the policies that each and every individual users might end up requiring. And then, of course, you streamline the maintenance based on activity insights. If you see what you see on the screen, the solution will also allow challenge response based approvals. So if if an end user is trying to install something which is not allowed, there can be a challenge response that you can configure. And the response and the challenge is something that the end user is going to take through along with the help desk team. There is a use case that I'm also going to demonstrate next, which will help you understand how you can also have a ServiceNow integration. Let me move to a slide which will now allow you to see a demo of a high flexibility work style, which normally you will end up giving if you have developers or system administrators or people who are high demanding, who say we need administrative permissions.
User. A good example of that will be this Canon printer installation. I've added this application to the allow list within our policy by defining that any drivers from Canon are allowed to be run by our users, so the user is able to install it seamlessly. But what about an application that has not been added to the allow list? Exception handling is a crucial part of privilege management. Because this user is currently set to the high flexibility work style, they are able to make their own decisions. So if this user wants to run an application that has not been added to the allow list within the policy, privilege management will allow them to do that. Instead of requiring them to enter admin credentials, they will see a friendly, customizable message that they can interact with. In this example, because this is a signed application from Microsoft, the user is able to simply install it by clicking yes in the dialog box that pops up. If the user tries to install an application that isn't signed, again, because they are in the high flexibility work style, they'll be prompted with a dialog box that asks them to select the application we'll go ahead and install. We can also challenge the user to re-authenticate if they're running high-risk applications like PowerShell. This user is re-authenticating as a standard user. In most organizations, PowerShell would not be available to standard users, but since this hypothetical user is a developer and is under the high flexibility work style, we're giving them the ability to make their own decisions because of their technical knowledge. So they can enter their credentials and run the application elevated, and we will have a full audit trail of their actions. Even though this user is a developer, we can still impose restrictions on them. So for example, if you wanted to block uTorrent or WhatsApp or other specific applications within your organization, that can easily be done through the block list functionality in the policy.
So if you realize what was done is that when you initially deploy, you might have a lot of end users for whom otherwise you are giving permission with a high flexibility style. And if you see pretty much, right, now you have appropriate auditing in place, you are challenging the ensures that your end-to-end application control takes care of while removing the administrative permissions from the end user. And permission remains only on the specific task or application that he's executing. That is where the privileges are elevated. So the endpoints have an agent, and it is that agent which is integrated at the kernel level of the Windows environment. And that takes care of ensuring that before a user can run a software, install a software, or do particular privileged activity, if he has enough permission and
user.
Who does not need a lot of permissions, right? He might still need to be the flexibility policy can be different, right? So let us see this one.
We'll also do basic household tasks, such as look at their network properties. But if the user tries to install an application, let's take Wireshark as an example, they'll be met with a dialog box asking them to provide a reason for installation. We've set up our ServiceNow integration for ITSM, so when the user clicks request, a new ticket will be created for them in ServiceNow. An incident number is provided to the user, in this case 10808. And if I take a look at our ServiceNow instance, you can see the new incident populating under 10808. And if we look deeper into this ticket, we can see all of the application details from the user. This includes the desktop they're running on, the reason for needing to run the application sign-in information, the SHA-1 hash information. But most importantly, I can approve this request for that user right now. I can approve this application for just one-off use, and that will get sent down to the local policy on that endpoint for that specific user for that application. So we're not approving it for everybody, we're just approving it for this one user. And if I come back to my endpoint and try to run Wireshark again, we'll see that the message has changed to show that the request has been approved, and we can go ahead and run the application. So we have the ability to facilitate a positive end user experience. Users will not be hitting roadblocks to productivity with.
Now, if you see the low flexibility work style, which has a ServiceNow integration, it ensures that you by default are not allowing full access, right? And ideally, this is where you want to be. You don't want to remain and continue in high flexibility for majority of your users, because that defeats the purpose. So, yes, you're right. By default, the risk will not be reduced, of course, if you keep allowing all the access for the end users. So the high flexibility policy should also be customized. We don't want to end up giving everyone high flexibility policy so that everyone can run whatever they want to run. And then you only have a very limited blacklisted applications. Of course, you want to challenge them and still want to allow them to run. It still defeats the purpose, right? So you start with that if required, and then you slowly identify what is that ideal policy, what is that must-have requirements, and so on. When we go to the analytics video, it will help you understand when you start with low flexibility policies, and then you realize that more and more users are requiring same access, which was possibly missed by you in the policy, then that request will come, and then you will end up adding it in the policy on the fly. So, of course, there is an improvement or enhancement in terms of how the policies should be configured. There will be that learning period in the longer run. But to start with, you can immediately jump forward with high flexibility work styles, right? Hope that answers your question, Tamim. But we'll again come back to at the end of the session, we'll again come back on questions.
Okay, Qusai, stop. There's another question.
Yes, Mukul.
From Tamim. I won't say the second name, but Tanim Al Hussein. How will the risk be reduced by EPM if you allow the user to always give an exception to override the policy? Will it record the session to ensure accountability? That's a great question.
Okay, so the second part of the question, Tamim, I had not answered. Yes, the first part was answered, that you will not reduce the risk if you keep allowing users with these exceptions. Of course, we are not overwriting the policy, by the way. What is happening is that you by default given a high flexibility to start with for those type of developers and administrators who are very high demanding. They will always keep asking for more. So you say, okay, fine, we start with this. And then over a period of time, we are going to identify what is not mandatory and must have for you. And then we move you into medium or a low work style, flexibility work styles. Yes, sessions are recorded in terms of logs. So you have end-to-end visibility of who is requesting for what access, who is executing what application, and so on. When we go into the reports, we will talk about that as well. Okay, I'll move forward.
Functioning on their endpoint.
The other area we focused on is trusted application protection, right? This is an important functionality where you have fileless threads, right? We are talking about many people, of course, don't even think that trusted applications like Microsoft Office, Adobe Reader, or Google Chrome are potential source of cyber threat. And we are talking about users, right? End users don't necessarily think that these are trusted applications. Will there be a threat coming from here? So, of course, there are, right? You always have scripts, you have tools, you have macros, which are always available. And users don't realize when they execute or enable those contents. So when the administrative rights are removed, now, of course, you can trust those critical operating system functionality, right? It becomes easier for you to implement the application controls. And of course, the solution works only, functionality works only for Windows endpoints. It will, of course, catch your bad scripts or infected attachments and any child processes and DLLs and so on, because the solution is an agent-based solution. It integrates at the DLL level in Windows. I wanted to quickly run through a ransomware protection with EPM. I have two videos which I'm going to run. One where without EPM, what happened? The protection configured, what happened?
Qusai, we have about 7 more minutes, so it's a time check. So in case there are questions, you need to accommodate that too. So remember that.
Sure. I will very quickly close this.
Tamim, do you have any rejoinder questions to the one that that Qusai answered?
So if you see over here, there is an email which the user when the user and when the user enables the content, he does the screen. There is a macro which is like where you went, right? as an end user without realizing, without an EPM, this is where you end up. With an EPM and trusted application protection configured, we are talking about the same email when the user ends up opening the Word document. You will enable editing, and then when you look at the content is going to be executed, the moment user clicks on enable content, while the Word file is open, he gets a block message for the file that was attempted to be executed. Basically, because there was a PowerShell which was attempted to be executed, the EPM solution blocks that. So that's how the ransomware protection will be taken care when you have.
Qusai, my apologies. If you can stop running the video and repeat the answer again, because Tanim says that her voice was breaking. So Tanim, we will answer your question after a while.
Moving quickly to the next.
Yeah.
Okay. I also see messages. Let me quickly also connect from another device.
All right, let's start, Qusai.
Yeah, I was just connected from another device as well, just in case.
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully this should be okay now.
Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
Perfect, done. So I wanted to quickly talk about the analytics and audit, right? It's important for you to understand the user behavior because that is what is going to help you to ensure that you have taken care of enhancing your policies. So you will need quick access to full audit trails of all the events to streamline the forensic investigations, for simplifying compliance, and of course, keeping on top of the latest threats, right? To best provide that, you'll see that the entire reporting functionality within the product or the solution is very granular, right? If you see some of these graphs, you will realize that it takes care of providing you end-to-end visibility of the user's access to the various applications, the number of administrative accounts that you still have in the environment, and so on. So let me quickly jump to that because we are running short of time. I'll quickly show that. So you'll see that there are privileged logon by user type information available.
Where are those admin privileges? This reporting is a great way to show the reduction in standing admin privileges as you implement the privilege management solution.
So the events will show you which applications users have accessed. And then within these applications, then you can decide if you want to, of course, configure some policies, right? So you can add the application to a policy. If you identify that there are some applications that everybody is accessing or requesting, then you straight away from the logs, straight away add it into the policy, right? That ensures that you are able to continuously enhance your policies and move people from high flexibility work styles to over a period of time into low flexibility work styles, which is where ideally you would want most of the users to be. Now that pretty much covers what I wanted to focus on in terms of the overall solution, except for this last slide, right? Sometimes there is a confusion on where does EPM fit in the overall endpoint security. And this one slide ensures that you understand that an antivirus is always going to be there, because you want to have that as your first line of defense, right? And for the threats that do bypass antivirus, most of the companies as of today will want to rely on endpoint detection and response solutions to detect and then react to the threats. However, with the combination of least privileged management and application control, most of the malwares and ransomware attacks will be then blocked. So we are talking about endpoint privilege management, adding these two important overlooked. It removes the excessive and end user privileges, and of course, it stops your zero-day attacks. And you have this application control, which takes care of blocking malicious codes. EDRs or other security tools like SIM, DLP, filtering, and all of that still remains as it is. Mukund, I have stopped sharing my slides for now. I
Yeah,
know
can you
because we
go
have
back to the
overshot
first
the
slide?
time.
Can you go back to the first slide, please?
Sure.
Okay, Yahya Khan has asked a question. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name right. Has EPM solution been tested on VDI? Do we lose any EPM capability on VDI? For laptop users, does EPM agent have an offline capability? Does it offer step-up security for offline scenarios?
There are too many questions, but I will answer the ones which I have caught hold of, Mukund.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Yes.
you can watch the question again. I'll take it one by one. Can you just go back to the opening slide that we had, the first slide? Can you just present that instead of stopping sharing? Go back to the first slide. I will repeat each of this question. Yahya Khan, please bear with us. We will answer each one of them for you.
Okay, I realize I am
Yeah, I
disconnected
think
from
you
the
are fine.
question, therefore.
Just hear the question out. Has
Yep.
the EPM solution been tested on VDI? That's the first part of the question.
Okay, the answer is yes. And, do we have Divya on the session also, please?
No, we don't. We don't.
Okay, fine. So yes, the answer is yes. VDI, it is tested on VDI solutions. I'm reading the question now, so I can answer them. Do we lose EPM capabilities on VDI? No. Your virtual desktops will also act exactly as you would want them for endpoint privilege management functionalities, because the policies will be configured per user. So the user who logs into the desktop, whether it is a physical or the virtual desktop, that would still apply. EPM does have a offline capability, which means that the policies will still apply when the users are offline. And yes, there is step-up security for offline scenarios will still apply. So if there is a user who tries to execute an application where step-up is configured, even if the machine is offline, it will apply. Yes.
Fantastic. Mr. Khan, did we answer your question? Yeah, we did answer. Thank you, everybody, for the enthusiastic response. We loved answering some of these questions, and we hope to see you. And in case you have any doubts or any questions, you can always write back to us. We will be sending you an email with the presentation, with everything there, and one of us will get in touch with you should you have anything else that you need to ask. Thank you again for your valuable time.
Appreciate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Qusai, for taking this through.
Thanks, Mukund.
Bye.
Thanks for organizing this. Appreciate.
Bye. Bye.